in her face, realizing that Trump is now president.
The reason that this idea to put a ban on stock trading for members of Congress is even a thing is because of Nancy Pelosi.
They're talking about literally going after her for insider trading.
She is rightfully criticized because she makes, think, $174,000 a year, yet she has a net worth of approximately $413 million.
The undeniable.
Nancy Pelosi has spent decades in Washington sidestepping scandals like a matador dodging raging bulls, graceful, calculated, and always just out of reach. But Joe Rogan wasn't playing that game. He didn't wave a red KP, swung a wrecking ball. Armed with facts, blunt jabs, and the kind of no-filter commentary that cuts deeper than any polished soundbite, Rogan sent Pelosi's carefully staged image crashing down. This wasn't just a roast, it was a political demolition. The gloss peeled away, the talking points crumbled, and what was left was the raw, uncomfortable truth. Pelosi's allies spend careers trying to hide. One
call to ban it. They were like, Nancy Pelosi's like, what? No, we're not going to do that. Why would we do that? Yeah, the lady's worth $200 million. She makes $200 grand a year. Yeah, right.
She's better at stock trading than Warren Buffett and George Soros.
Yeah, why wouldn't she be? I mean, she know where everything is going to hit. She know what's going to hit, when it's going to hit, and how much it's going to hit for.
Joe Rogan didn't just take a jab at Nancy Pelosi, he turned her into a one-woman punchline factory. This wasn't polite sparring. It was a full-blown dissection of her entire political career. He shredded the over-rehearsed talking points, mocked her death grip on power, like a barnacle clinging to a sinking ship, and drilled right into the weak spots she spent decades trying to cover up. The hypocrisy, the doublespeak, the career, so long, she probably has a pension plan older than half the people in Congress. It all got dragged into the spotlight. Rogan didn't hold back, and Pelosi's carefully polished image didn't stand a chance.
This giant lady who wants all the money.
Private beach in Italy, and we're going to go out tonight by singeing your retinas with a photograph of that event.
Who's been in politics for 150 years. There's pictures of her with Kennedy.
I didn't realize Nancy Pelosi was well endowed.
Oh boy.
Really?
Yeah.
You've done the research.
Well, there's all these photos where people are calling her, what's a gilf?
If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon, because Joe Rogan's takedown of Nancy Pelosi was pure fire. He mocked the way Pelosi paints herself as a champion of the little guy while living in a mansion big enough to host a G20 summit. He exposed the glaring contrast between her polished image as a public servant and a career of political maneuvering that always seems to conveniently benefit her own circle. And he didn't stop there. He roasted her for lecturing about working-class struggles while sipping on imported wine that costs more than a month's rent for the very people she claims to represent. Pelosi talks like she's one of them, but Rogan made it clear she's been living like royalty all along.
This is third in line for the presidency on a private beach in Italy. Soak it in, ladies and gentlemen. Close your eyes as you go to sleep tonight and try to get that image out of your head, if you can.
You never seen her?
No, I have never seen Nancy Pelosi.
No disrespect, Mrs. Pelosi. I admire her for her stock choices.
Would you get every person in the country to turn off their televisions? You throw that up on the screen?
And look at the size of those fucking sweater hammers.
That is incredible. That has made me a lot more in favor of Congress.
So was that.
Then came the part that had everyone either laughing or squirming. The moment Rogan lit into Pelosi's notorious stock trading scandals, he didn't just bring it up, he dismantled it piece by piece, painting her less like a public servant and more like a Wall Street shark in designer heels. With surgical precision, Rogan described how her trades always seemed to line up perfectly, with upcoming legislations so perfect it made coincidence sound like the weakest excuse in the book. He framed Pelosi's career not as public service, but as a financial masterclass, the kind that would make professional brokers jealous and the average American.
No, it's wild. They confronted her about being able to insider trade.
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he received from you?
No, absolutely not.
Look, she pushes the microphone away. Do you see the Nancy Pelosi thing? Oh, this is ridiculous. Nothing was insider. Let's watch this because it's so funny.
Nancy Pelosi became rich.
Why do you have to read that? We're here to talk about this.
Wanted to give you a chance just to respond. He accused you of insider trading. What's your response to that?
That's ridiculous. In fact, I very much support the trading of members of Congress.
And also went after Pelosi's uncanny ability to dodge. Questions like it's an Olympic event in verbal gymnastics. He joked that watching one of her press conferences is like watching a magician perform a trick except with Pelosi. The strings, the trapdoors, and the card up her sleeve are all in plain sight. She speaks in circles, sounding like she's addressing the issue while actually saying absolutely nothing, and that became one of Rogan's sharpest comedic weapons, exposing how Pelosi can talk for minutes on end without delivering a single
people to enter into politics at the highest level that didn't need the money and really were good people that really wanted to just change the tone of how everything is governed. And that's going to be so hard to do because the money is so nuts.
And that's,
did you see the Nancy Pelosi thing? The new one?
She was being interviewed and then was like, I didn't want to talk about that.
Anderson Cooper. Put that on. Anderson Cooper, he sneaks it in. She's like, I came in here to talk about the anniversary of Medicaid. Like, she cares about Medicaid. She's worth an estimated $400.
But Rogan didn't stop at politics. He ripped apart Pelosi's entire polished persona, the staged photo ops, the spin jobs where every failure magically becomes a win. Even that infamous sarcastic clap at the State of the Union, which he compared to the political version of a passive-aggressive Yelp review. All smile, all sting. He dragged her endless feuds with opponents too, pointing out how she seems to inhale conflict like it's political oxygen. Then Rogan zoomed out to the bigger picture: Pelosi as the poster child for a generation of career politicians who preach progress but deliver little more than survival tactics. And as for the media's worship of her savvy, Rogan torched that too, saying it's not genius at all, it's just her uncanny knack for dodging scandal after scandal without ever facing real accountability.
Portfolio, this was a fascinating statistic to me, grew 70%.
They have had better results on the stock market than literally anyone ever.
And her portfolio outperformed every single large hedge fund in that same year and even more than doubled the returns of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway.
And they have access to information about laws that are going to be passed.
The president stands with the American people on this. He doesn't want to see people like Nancy Pelosi enriching themselves off of public service and ripping off their constituents in the process.
If that's not inside.
Rogan summed up Pelosi's staying power as the perfect storm of ruthless determination and a broken political system that rewards time served over actual results, and he didn't sugarcoat the hypocrisy, reminding everyone that for all her lofty speeches about protecting democracy, Pelosi has never hesitated to play the very same political games she condemns in others. By the time he was finished, the image of Pelosi as an unshakable stateswoman had crumbled. What stood in its place was far less flattering. A career politician clinging to power. A veteran player of a rigged system that never really changes for ordinary Americans. Under Rogan's roasting spotlight, her decades in Washington looked less like a proud legacy and more like a never-ending improv act. One where the performer keeps forgetting her lines, but refuses to leave the stage.
An estimated 400 million. And because the guy was so polarizing, and because he was such an easy guy to turn into a Nazi. There's a threat to democracy. We could do anything we can to stop him. So what do? They stop all primaries. They don't have real primaries anymore. They rig it with Bernie Sanders. They rig it with RFK Jr. You know, they're just the whole...
On Rogan shredded Pelosi's political resume like a UFC fighter pounding a heavy bag, reminding everyone that for all her years in power, her accomplishments look a lot more cosmetic than concrete. When he hit on her speeches, it wasn't about policy at all, it was about how they sound like karaoke night gone wrong. With Pelosi squinting at a teleprompter she can't quite read. Her career, Rogan joked, feels like someone gripping the steering wheel but never actually driving the car. Decades in leadership, yet the result is a swamp of half measures and endless negotiations. Then came the financial jabs, the whispers that trail her name like shadows. Rogan didn't hold back, mocking her lucky stock picks as the political equivalent of spotting Bigfoot, rare, suspicious, and somehow just believable enough for conspiracy theorists to feast on. He spun it into a running gag, imagining Pelosi's brokerage account lighting up like a video game loot chest every time Congress passed industry-friendly legislation. The thought of her giving a speech while secretly checking ticker symbols was too sharp. Too funny and way too on.
About Pelosi, she's a smart woman. She does a great job. I think she really loves our country.
No, did you see what
I like Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she's tough and she's smart, but she deserves to be Speaker. I would help Nancy Pelosi if she needs some votes. She may need some votes. I will perform a wonderful service for her.
Pelosi's ability to sidestep tough questions was another easy target for Rogan. He likened it to watching a fighter duck every punch without ever throwing one back. Her press conferences, he joked, weren't about clarity, they were about performance art. She'd give these long, winding answers that sounded important, but you could play them forward or backward and they'd mean the exact same thing. Nothing. It wasn't just about dodging traps. It was about burying the room in so much verbal fog that people forgot what the original question even was. And Rogan didn't stop there. He tore into her decades of strategic leadership, which in reality looked more like waiting for the public mood to tell her which way the wind was blowing. Outrage, she'd ride the wave. Risk, she'd vanish back to shore. Rogan compared it to throwing confetti at a burning building. It grabs attention. It looks theatrical, but it doesn't actually do a damn thing to put
money on the stock market. It is not all Nancy Pelosi.
Investigators might finally get a peek inside Nancy and Paulie P's earnings sheets.
Nancy Pelosi should be investigated. She has the highest return of anybody in the history of Wall Street.
It is red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. It's pretty much down the middle.
He wants to see a ban on stock trading by people.
Also, leaned into the generational gap in Pelosi's politics. He made it clear it wasn't about her age. It was about her operating system, like trying to run the newest apps on a phone that hasn't been updated since 2009. Her playbook still relied on polished sound bites and bipartisan photo ops, as if those tricks could paper over the massive cracks in the system. But in today's climate polarized online, instant fact-checking those moves looked less like savvy strategy and more like relics from a museum of political history. Then came the roast of her image management. Rogan joked that every Pelosi appearance was staged like a campaign, ad perfect lighting, rehearsed smiles, angles dialed in to project control. But instead of making her look strong, it made her look out of touch. In an era where people crave raw authenticity, the polish felt like a shield. The image of Pelosi as a House Titan might impress Washington insiders, but to regular Americans, it just screamed permanence. A politician so entrenched she stopped being a person and turned into an institution. And as Rogan reminded, the crowd institutions don't change on their own. They only change when they're shoved.
Way up there in the multiple million.
Well, she's psychic.
Who in your book is a greater threat to American democracy, Elon Musk or Donald Trump?
Oh, Donald Trump without any question. I mean, Elon Musk, strange. Donald Trump, very, very, very dangerous.
I don't know if you know this. She's really good at the stock market. She should teach that, huh?
Ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow managed to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position. You know, what happened to USAID? We're just curious as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing. They seem to be mysteriously, they get wealthy. We don't know why.
The problem is the ones that aren't honest, and there's a ton of them, and they don't get rooted.
He zeroed in on what he called Pelosi's greatest talent: not passing landmark legislation. Not bold reform, but political survival itself. She wasn't the architect of change. She was the escape artist of Capitol Hill. Decades of practice had taught her how to slip through scandals, dodge accountability, and outlast her critics like a magician with one too many rabbits in the hat. Every misstep rebranded as a misunderstood gesture. Every scandal written off as partisan noise. It wasn't leadership, Rogan argued, it was endurance. The art of staying just far enough ahead of the mob with a smile that said, "Don't worry. I'll still be here when you've all moved on." To him, Pelosi wasn't the fearless reformer the headlines made her out to be. She was the figurehead of progress who seemed more invested in protecting the status quo than challenging it. A strategist who could outmaneuver opponents but never the system itself. By the end, Rogan's roast felt like performance art, half comedy,